Okay, the committee is now resumed in public session. You're all very welcome this morning, and I would once more remind all those in attendance to ensure that your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. And before we start our meeting, I wish to explain some limitations to parliamentary privilege and practices of the Houses of the Oireachtas regarding reference you may make to other persons in your evidence. The evidence of witnesses physically present or who give evidence within the parliamentary precincts is protected pursuant to both Constitution and Statute by absolute privilege. This means that you have an absolute defence against any defamation action for anything you say at the meeting. However, you're expected not to abuse this privilege, and it's my duty as Cathaoirleach to ensure that it's not abused. Therefore, if your statements are potentially defamatory in relation to an identifiable person or entity, you'll be directed to discontinue your remarks. It's imperative that you comply with such directions. Witnesses are reminded of the long-standing parliamentary practice that they should not comment on, criticise or make charges against any person or any entity by name or in such a way as to make him or her identifiable or otherwise engage in speech that might be regarded as damaging to the good name or reputation of a person or entity. Therefore, if your statements are potentially defamatory in relation to an identifiable person or entity, you'll be directed to discontinue, and it's imperative that you comply with that direction. Members are reminded of the provision of Standing Order 218 that the committee shall refrain from inquiring into the merits of a policy or policies of the government or a minister of the government or the merits of the objective of such policies. Members are also reminded of the long-standing parliamentary practice that they should not comment on, criticise or make charges against a person outside the House or an official either by name or in such a way as to make him or her identifiable. We are joined this morning by the Controlling Auditor General, Mr. Seamus McCarthy, who is a permanent witness to the committee. And today we engage with Mr. Ryan Tubridy and Mr. Noel Kelly. Mr. Tubridy and Mr. Kelly have been advised the areas that the committee will focus on, and they are, and I list those out: payments to presenters and personnel at RTE, specifically from 2017 to date; details of Mr. Ryan Tubridy's contractual relationship with RTE, including related payments and exit fees; the process relating to the tripartite agreement from 2020, including its negotiations and sign-off; the content of that tripartite agreement, and the issue of being underwritten by RTE; the raising of associated invoices and related payments, the details of the invoices and who is aware of the same; any instructions given by Mr. Ryan Tubridy to Mr. Noel Kelly, and any further discussions in that regard before finalising the agreement; the call on the 7th of May 2020 and the letter that followed from Ms. Dee Forbes to Mr. Ryan Tubridy; and then any matters arising from material provided to the committee in advance of the meeting or materials provided by RTE to the committee. I'd like to thank the witnesses for appearing, and I welcome the fact that you've attended. We didn't have to compel your attendance voluntarily before this committee to assist in our examinations. And just before I ask Mr. Tubridy for his opening statement, just to mention that the documents have come late. We were promised them yesterday morning. We didn't receive them. Some members received them as they were travelling here this morning, and only had sight of them in the last hour. And the other thing I want to set out is that the position of your legal advisor, just to remind them that the attendance of your legal advisor is with the agreement of the committee. They're not entitled to contribute or to disrupt the meeting or interfere with the conduct of the meeting in any way. So, Mr. Tubridy, just if we could have your opening statement, please.
Of course, Cathaoirleach, deputies, good morning to you all, and first let me thank you for acceding to my request to come before you today. We felt it was really important to be here. I've always believed in the importance of public service. I was brought up that way, and I have great respect for the Oireachtas as an institution. I've come here, as you know, voluntarily, because I believe in the work that you as a committee are doing. I don't say that in any other way other than that I want to assist in every way I can. I appreciate that you'll have a lot of questions, so I'm going to try to keep my opening statement as short as possible. I begin by clearly and unambiguously at the very outset this morning state that I'm truly sorry for all of this and for any part which I have played, and be it consciously or unconsciously, and anything that has contributed to the debacle that we're dealing with today. I'd like to apologise to the committee that they've had to take this time to deal with this matter today, and to my colleagues in RTE, and to my listeners. So, given the events of the last 3 weeks, there is a lot that I wish to say, and there's a lot that I need to say. So please bear with me. My aim today is to help correct and clarify some very serious matters, and I'll be relying on my agent, Noel Kelly, here to go through the figures and provide greater detail. I'd like everybody here today to understand that the figures and statements presented by RTE over the last few weeks in relation to my remuneration have created a fog of confusion. A fog of confusion over what I was paid, and when I was paid, and what I knew, and when I knew it. Full transparency and disclosure on RTE's part, I'm sorry to say, would simply have avoided so much of this. And I'm here to do one thing and one thing only, ladies and gentlemen and committee members, and that is to set the record straight and to call out some untruths. And it is my belief that there are 7 material untruths that I'd like to address. And the first is as follows. This claim that I did not take a pay cut from RTE in 2020, this is not true. I took a 20% pay cut from RTE in my 2020 to 2025 contract. Simple as that. I took a 20% pay cut from RTE. I'm obliged to do and present 205 radio shows and 38, as it was then, live 2-hour late shows under this contract. I am what's called an independent contractor. I get no pension or entitlements from RTE. That's the nature of it. Under the terms of my contract, I'm allowed to do additional work outside of RTE. That's also the nature of it. And I stress that there is nothing morally, ethically, or legally wrong with me or any independent contractor doing additional work for another client outside of RTE. But to be clear, I took a pay cut from RTE of 20% in 2020 for each of the 5 years of my contract at a cost of €525,000 to me over the length of that contract. It's an awful, I'll move on to my second untruth. The suggestion that my decision to retire from the Late Show was prompted by this whole debacle. This is not remotely true. I wasn't aware of any of this fiasco when I decided to retire from the Late Show. I made my initial decision to leave the Late Show pretty much a year ago. It was very personal. It was made in the heart and in the soul. Around this time, I mentioned it to those closest to me, my family and my agent and a few others, and they were surprised. They were very surprised. Why would you leave such a show? And I explained to them, and eventually brought them around to my way of thinking, that among other things, I had left a lot of me on the floor in the studio after COVID and during COVID. I was burnt out, being honest with you, and I was exhausted. A lot of people in this country, as you know, were burnt out and exhausted after COVID, doing a lot more important jobs than I was doing, but I'm just telling you from where I'm coming from. So I turned it over in my mind over a few months, but by the time I got to January, there was no turning over in my mind. I knew it was time to go. I made the decision. And just to make it abundantly clear, there is zero connection between my departure and this very raw situation of recent weeks. I informed management on March 13th of this year. I first became aware of this Grant Thornton review in May, some 2 months later, and even then I had no inkling of the bombshell which was to come when RTE released their statement on June 22nd. The third untruth is that I was covertly or secretly overpaid by RTE. This is not true. I was not overpaid by RTE at any point. I fully accept I am very, very well paid. I understand that. But I was fully paid in accordance with my contract, which my agent negotiated openly and honestly and in good faith. There are no overpayments. Now, there are RTE's under declarations, which we challenged them on back in 2020. And there are indeed RTE's over declarations, of which they actually paid me in 2020 and 2021. This has caused justifiable anger among my colleagues. I understand that. And we're going to deal with all of that in the next few hours, and indeed the next 6 hours or more. We'll stay for as long as it takes. The upshot of RTE's inaccurate declarations is an impression that I've been less than honest. This is not the case. The fourth untruth is that I was aware that RTE were trying to conceal payments to me. This is not true. I was not aware that RTE were concealing payments to me. RTE acknowledged this in their statement of June 22nd, 2023, when they stated that Grant Thornton had made no findings against me. The fifth untruth, there was a secret agreement with Renault that I tried to conceal. This is not true. But not only that, it beggars belief. Think about it. I had a separate commercial agreement with Renault. the basis of which was that I would make public appearances and perform road shows and things for them. And the work that I've done for Renault is all over social media. The suggestion that was a secret makes no sense. The sixth untruth, that RTE's underwriting of Renault's payment obligations was a secret. This is not true. RTE's underwriting of Renault's payment obligations was not a secret, as the documents we've prepared for you today show. And as my agent will explain in more detail, RTE committed in February 2020 to provide this guarantee in the early stages of contract negotiations around my 2020 to 25 contract. This is unequivocally confirmed in an email dated, critical document, 20th of February 2020, from Breda O'Keefe to my agent. It was copied to other members of the Executive Board, the Director General, the RTE Solicitor's Office, everyone in RTE who needed to know knew. You'll find this on page 10 of the booklet of documents you have in front of you. Far from being secret, it was well known. And finally, the seventh untruth, that I did not ask RTE about their under-declarations of my earnings. When they released the 2017, 18 and 19 earnings, as they did all in one day, January 20th, 2021, this is a question I did not ask at the time. This is a question I should have asked. I fully accept that. But I will try and explain briefly and as clearly as humanly possible. At the end of the 2015 to 20 contract, my agent advised me that I was entitled to a phenomenally large figure payment of €120,000 that has been variously called a loyalty or an end of contract or an exit payment. I did not invoice for that payment, I did not pursue that payment, and I did not receive any payment. The documents provided to you bear this out. In my simple view, I had foregone that payment for €120,000, not taken it. But because of how RTE reported that decision in their accounts, Cahirlock, the narrative of the last 3 weeks has been that not only did I take this payment, but that I somehow contrived to hide it. So let me reiterate, I actually waived my entitlement to this payment and I didn't receive 1 cent of it. I hid nothing. I had nothing to hide. As the evidence provided to you today shows, my agent had already pointed out to RTE in 2020 that we thought the manner in which they were planning to account for my earnings in 2017, 18 and 19 was incorrect, and we had understood that they accepted our position, so that by the time they released the figures, I assumed that the Chief Financial Officer, the financial professionals in RTE, and the external auditors who had audited the accounts in these years, 17, 18, 19, had accountancy reasons for accounting for it the way they did. So I'd like to add that my company earnings fully reflect what I earned in these and all subsequent years. I'm particularly upset and disappointed about the decision and framing of the RTE statement of June 22nd, which inextricably linked my name to this whole fiasco. My name was mentioned 15 times in that statement. 15 times. And I was not consulted once. I did not have the Grant Thornton report, which RTE had, and which RTE acknowledged made no findings of wrongdoing on my part. I asked RTE to clarify that this was the case. They did. 4 days. 4 days after much of the damage was done. Pretty much all of the damage was done. I signed a contract in good faith. I declared my earnings. I paid every cent of tax. My employer has acknowledged that. It has engaged in deceptive practices to pay me, practices that were hidden from me. The result, I'm nearly finished, forgive me for overgoing. The result of this is that I've become the face of a national scandal. I've been accused of being complicit, deceitful and dishonest. I think the statement of June the 22nd was very unhelpful in this regard. The full truth was concealed. I take full responsibility. I can't say it enough. I take full responsibility for not asking more questions back on January the 20th, 2021, when the figures for that 2017, 18 and 19 were released. I take responsibility for that, I understand. But as has become abundantly clear and obvious in the last 3 weeks, this highlights the existence of 2 RTEs. 2. There are those who are involved in attempting to conceal payments and who were in a position to call me or call my agent and ask for our help in establishing the full facts. Instead, they chose to hurriedly issue a deeply, deeply damaging statement on June 22nd, which failed to include the full facts. I have nothing but respect and admiration for that great number of decent, hard-working people in RTE, my colleagues, my friends. And I'm very sorry for those whose lives have been made difficult with an incessant dripping of new revelations. I'm thinking particularly of my radio show colleagues and friends, that they've had to be put through all of this for reasons not of their own making. They work hard. They all work hard in RTE. And I want to thank those colleagues who have supported me through these last few weeks. And in closing, I'd like to thank the many people from across the country who've taken time to stop me on the street, decent Irish citizens, taking my shoulder and my elbow in their hands and saying, "You'll get through this." I have nearly a foot off the ground high of cards and letters from people who have written to Ryan Tubridy, Dublin, and I got them, fair play to the post people in An Post, and I thank the Irish people for that. I am hopeful that they will see from my statement and my appearance here today that I am determined to inform them of the truth and to demonstrate that I have nothing to hide. And I'm also hopeful that I will soon get back on air to do the job I love. Thank you all for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Tubridy. Mr. Kelly, now it's normally 5 minutes for opening statements, and we've gone 15 minutes into it. So I would ask you to, it's normally 5 minutes for them. So I would ask you to, to try and be as brief as you can with it, please. But we do want to give you the opportunity because we realise that you're here today to put it your side. So please cooperate.
I just want to echo everything Ryan says, and I'm sorry that we're here today as well. We asked to come and to meet the House because we have huge respect for it, and we haven't spoken to anybody else, and we just wanted to get the opportunity to put our side across. I'll try and be as brief as I possibly can, but if you'll allow me. So, Herlock and deputies, thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today. I hope this meeting will help to clarify the confusion which has arisen over the past few weeks. At the outset, I want to say that we appreciate the seriousness of all of these issues. The controversy over the past few weeks has been damaging to RTE, but it's also been hugely damaging to Ryan Tubridy, to myself and to my own business. Earlier today, we circulated a pack which we believe are the key documents that will help understand this crisis. The document runs 39 pages and it includes relevant excerpts from Ryan's 2015 and 2020 contracts with RTE, extracts from the accounts of Ryan's company for the relevant years, various mails which track the back and forth of the negotiations for the 2020 RTE contract with Renault. We've made redactions where necessary, but we've been as transparent as possible to inform you with all the information at our disposal. I want to highlight a number of documents which will go to the heart of the issues. Let me start with Ryan's under-declaration of payments made to Ryan when they were published figures for 17, 18, 19 and in January 21. This issue has caused a lot of distress, and it's entirely a mess of RTE's own making. Ryan's contract from 2015, pages 1 to 4 of the pack, clearly states the fees he received in each of the following 5 years, and they're set out in clause 8.1 of the contract. It was 495, 495, 545, 545, 545 for the 5 years. He received those fees exactly, nothing more and nothing less. This is confirmed in the extracts from Ryan's filed accounts, company Tuttle Productions, which we also include in the pack. We note that the accounts of Tuttle Productions run from January to December, whereas RTE's contract ran from September. In January 21, when RTE made its incorrect declarations, they knew what they had paid Ryan. Indeed, the Chief Financial Officer emailed us on the 19th of December 2019 on page 5 in the pack. She set out the actual earnings for each of the relevant years correctly. But just over a year later, in January 2021, RTE made false or incorrect declarations about the same figures. In some respects, this was an accident waiting to happen. We'd previously asked RTE to give us reasonable notice when they planned to publish figures. My email on the 16th of January 2020, page 6 of the pact, specifically requests this. If they'd done that, we would have had time to check the figures and avoid errors. However, RTE ignored our request for reasons I still don't understand. In March 2020, we saw the first sign that RTE, with all its accountants, auditors, might be struggling to understand the correct accounting treatment for what they paid Ryan in 2017, 2018 and 2019. That month they sent us a letter about exit fee bonus Ryan was due as part of his 2015 contract. It was agreed that Ryan was not going to raise an invoice for this, and they wanted to agree how to explain it. But in the draft which was sent to us, they proposed to change the payments which they made to Ryan already, effectively lowering them by €120,000. Their logic was that they could offset €120,000 we had agreed not to ask for in 2020 against payments which had already been made to Ryan for 17, 18 and 19. We argued against this, and they accepted our points at the time, and this is clear from the document pages 14 to 16 of our pack. For some reason, however, it looks like the confused thinking returned, and they published again the wrong figures in January 2021, effectively causing his reputation damage to Ryan in the process. Huge reputational damage, sorry. One important point I should add. Just last month, on the 23rd of June, RTE published new figures. Effectively, they restated figures for payments to Ryan for 17, 18 and 19 and added in declarations for figures paid to him in 20 and 21. Bizarrely, the figures they declare for both 20 and 21 are wrong. In both years, they overstate the amount they paid Ryan, and we addressed this issue on page 28 and 29 of the pack. For 2020, they overstated earnings of 62,536. For 21, they overstated 83,381. So clearly, RTE is still struggling with these declarations. Now let's turn to the Renault contract, which ran parallel to the 2020 contract which Ryan had with RTE. I refer you to page 5 of the pack. This is an email sent to NK Management on the 19th of December 2019 from RTE's then Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Breda O'Keefe. This email sets out RTE's starting position for negotiations on the 2020 contract. You will see that this email is where the idea of a commercial sponsorship with a third party with an annual fee of €75,000 is first suggested. This comes from RTE. This did not strike us as unusual, as Renault was a key sponsor for RTE, so it was understandable that they would try to wish to ensure that all parties were aligned. Next, we come to RTE's decision to underwrite this Renault contract. This is perhaps the most shocking revelation of this morning. Since this controversy began, RTE tried to distance themselves from this decision. Effectively, they have blamed the former Director General, Dee Forbes, for doing a solo run and giving a verbal commitment to underwrite the contract on a Zoom call in May. RTE executives had said how there was a strong pushback against the idea of underwriting the agreement. That is incorrect. I refer you to page 10 of the pack. So at the time, Ms. Breda O'Keefe was Chief Financial Officer of RTE. On this page, you will see an email which she sent to my office dated the 20th of February 2020. It is copied to another member of the Executive Board, the then Director General and RTE's solicitor. In this email, Ms. Breda O'Keefe responds in red to various points which had been discussed. She states at the top of the email that this is our final position. Because negotiations go back and forth, this is our final position in respect of the new contract. On the last paragraph on this page, Ms. O'Keefe, on behalf of RTE, states explicitly, we can provide you with the side letter to underwrite this fee for the duration of the contract. There was no secret. There is no secret. There was no secret. To our surprise, Ms. O'Keefe told the committee last week, when she left RTE in March, that there was no support to provide that type of guarantee, and no such guarantee was on offer. But she had written to us, making exactly that offer a month earlier. Last week, nobody from RTE here with Ms. O'Keefe challenged her when she said that. And we were surprised too, because on the 30th of June, 4 days before she appeared at the media committee, we wrote to RTE and highlighted the significance of Ms. O'Keefe's email. Her email also casts a new light on the contribution of Adrian Lynch, Deputy Director General, to this committee. Mr. Lynch told the committee that agreement was to give underwrite. The contract was given verbally on a Zoom call with NK Management on the 7th of May by the then Director General, and he described this as a significant point at the centre of this. RTE had tried to portray the guarantee as a decision given late in the negotiations on a Zoom call by G Forbes without the awareness of the Executive Board. Clearly, this is not correct. The decision was taken early by RTE and known widely within the Executive Board and RTE. So let me move to the invoicing arrangements for Renault contract. Our document pack shows that RTE did not just suggest the idea of the contract with Renault, it oversaw every development and implementation of same. We were happy with that. We knew Renault was a major sponsor for RTE, so RTE would be committed to keeping them happy. We knew the contract with Renault was a separate contract from Ryan's independent contractor services Ryan had for RTE for radio and TV work. We understood that Ryan would have to do extra work for Renault, but that was no difference to the other work that Ryan would do for the BBC or with his publishers, etc. This was just a separate commercial agreement. Ryan was agreeing to a substantial pay cut from RTE and he was entitled to seek other work outside of RTE. There was nothing secret about this. Nothing secret about this. Far from it, the contract required Ryan to do public appearances for Renault, which they could seek and expect attention, and indeed they did. So with the terms agreed, RTE instructed us how to invoice for this work. For the first invoice, they instructed us to raise an invoice directly with Renault, and they gave us names and details set on the proposed narrative for the invoice. As you can see, the instructions RTE gave us for this is an email on the 24th of July 2020, page 23 in this pack, and on page 24 you can see the invoice we did indeed send to Renault. When it came to invoices for 2 and 3, RTE gave us new instructions. I refer to page 25 of the pack. This is an email from the then Commercial Director, Geraldine O'Leary, dated the 29th of April 2022. This invoice passes on instructions as for how invoices 2 and 3 should be raised, and the email instructs us on the company name to be put on the invoice, Astus, the address to be put on the invoice, the VAT reference to be included in the invoice, and it instructs us not to put any person's name on it. This email also gave us general insurance from a colleague of Mr. Leary's that said, if he, meaning NK Management, sends it back to me, I will sort everything else out. You should know that while invoices were made out to Astus, we were directed to email them to RTE. They would do what was necessary to process them with Astus. I should stress that at this time, we in NK Management had no idea who Astus was. We had no reason to think that Astus was linked to RTE or that it was acting on behalf of RTE. We had no idea they might be making payments to us on behalf of RTE or that the payments were linked to RTE underwriting the Renault contract. RTE never said that to us. Astus never said that to us. And Renault never said that to us. We simply followed instructions we were given, as we had with the first invoice. You will see a copy of the 2 invoices raised in the name of Astus being sent by email from us to RTE in the pack, pages 26-27. People have asked us why we went along with those instructions, why we didn't set out more detail about what the invoices related to. But at the time, we had no reason to suspect that RTE might be trying to hide payments to Ryan, and I'm still shocked that that was their intention. We trusted RTE. It's not some unknown startup with opaque funding and checkered past or a record for dodgy financial dealings. It's a national institution, 100 years old, massive business turning over 350 million a year. It has internal and external auditors. It has a heavyweight board, teams of financial advisors, accountants. As Mr. Backhurst said yesterday, RTE has robust processes and rigorous oversight of financial in many parts of the organisation. And that is what we assumed too. Why would we suspect that they were hiding information about one of their key contracts? Why would they even do that? Why would they even do that? We're nearing the end, and I'm sorry, but it's important. But I want to address one other thing. There's been a lot of coverage of a side letter with the 2020 contract in which the Director General says the agreed earnings in the contract won't be reduced during the term of the contract. As any lawyer will confirm, this letter had no practical impact. The contract itself guarantees the earnings, and that is what a contract does. We were simply trying to impress on RTE that Ryan had just signed up to new cuts in his 2020 contract of 525,000 and had also never taken the payment of 120,000. So they shouldn't even think about coming back for more cuts given the size of those cuts. And to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, for the past number of years, Ryan has continued to perform at the highest level, working with millions of colleagues and leading shows which bring in, over the 6-year period, 100 million in revenue to RTE. He raises tens of millions for charities through the toy show, various appeals. We've heard a lot about RT's public service ethos, a lot about their public service ethos, but let's call a spade a spade. RT is a hybrid organisation. Its commercial activities are key to keeping the station afloat, maintaining jobs and creating content. Ryan Tubridy has been a huge driver for RT's most successful commercial activities over the past 14 years. Ryan and I have attracted, and our families and our friends, a horrendous amount of criticism and abuse in the past few weeks, and I would not wish it on anybody. Why? Because the only figure in this whole story whose face was recognisable was Ryan Tubridy. He's been made a poster boy for this scandal, and that's undeserved. This is not the Ryan Tubridy scandal. This is the RTE scandal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for those opening statements. Just before we move to the committee members, there's one issue, Mr. Tubridy, you might clarify for me. The issue of the 75,000 payments, obviously the invoices for that was what brought this to light in March when the auditors found them. And when I first heard about this, and I wanted to ask you this morning, just to set the scene for this meeting, that 75,000 shortfall gap that had to be made up, call it what you like, additional payment, the country was shut down. Yes. Thousands of my constituents and people around the country were on €200 or €300 a week pandemic payment. And you and your agent, between you, did you have any doubts about the merits of that or the credibility of looking, to make up that 75,000 at that particular point? Because you're on the Late Late Show and provided a good service, and I watched it because, it was good viewing right through COVID, and to acknowledge that the performances were great given the circumstances. But did you have any doubts about, the credibility or the merits of that, of looking for that, and your own credibility?
I appreciate the question and the kind words.
Short answers, because
I'll keep them short. I think what I'm going to be saying a lot today,
which is in relation to that.
In relation to that is that my agent and friend Noel Kelly, it's his job to get the best deal as he sees it for his client and clients.
On your instructions, Mr. Tubridy.
Well, you could say that, yeah,
yes,
of course.
I mean,
he would absolutely try and get what he considers to be the best deal.
Did you have any doubts in those discussions that you had between you back in the earlier part of 2020?
I think it would be fair to say
about the merits of it.
In terms of the financial implications of the commercial side of RTE, that it probably felt it wasn't problematic in that sense.
That's not what I'm asking you. Did you have doubts about the public optics of this and the possible reputational damage of looking for that 75,000 in those circumstances, yes or no? And did you discuss that, the merits of that? That's all I want to know.
I would say that I would always have doubts about doing too much.
And did you discuss that with your agent?
Do we have a conversation about that? That's unlikely.
No. So you had you're telling me here this morning that you had no conversation with NK Communications regarding the matter of looking for this gap of 75,000?
No, we wouldn't. We would be inclined to just, to be honest with you, Ciara, I say to Noel, I say, you do your job and I do mine, right. And that's how it works.
But you knew that this gap had to be made up, and this 75,000 had to be magicked up somewhere or another, for want of a better term.
I trust in the process.
Yes. So you've clarified that you had no doubts about the merits, the credibility, or the possible reputational damage. That wasn't discussed?
That was not discussed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Imelda Munster, 15 minutes.
Good morning to our guests, or witnesses rather. I just want to start off with the tripartite agreement, Mr. Kelly. Just in relation to that, can you, and I'd ask you to keep your answers as short as possible, can you tell us briefly, how did that actually come about? What was the reason for it?
I'll just refer to some of my notes, if you don't mind. How it came about, it was an RTE initiative. RTE, Renault's obviously...
But, yeah, okay, sorry, just for a second. It was an RTE initiative, but I had to stem from somewhere. You said in your opening statement that Ryan was agreeing to a substantial pay cut from RTE. So did it come about on the basis of you negotiating with RTE?
No, it had
right,
no.
so how did it come
had
about?
no relation. Ryan's contract is for 205 radio shows, and it's for 38 two-hour TV shows. This was a totally separate agreement, and it came about because Renault and RTE wanted Ryan to do more work around the sponsorship, wanted them to do late shows in dealers, etc. So that's where it came from.
So you're seriously saying that it didn't come about at all from the pay cuts that Ryan was going to take? It wasn't a way of topping up the salary? The
sponsor wanted us to do activity to embellish the sponsorship around the dealers.
But why would RTE, of their own bat, be concerned about setting your client up with a commercial deal? Why would they suddenly, when at a time when everybody else was asked to take pay cuts, why would RTE, and who in RTE came to you and said, listen, we want to look after Ryan, we want to set up a separate commercial deal? Can you honestly say that you did not initiate that in any shape or form with RTE?
Whatsoever.
Right, so tell us then, who in RTE came to you and what did they say?
If I refer to page 5 in the pack, under the contract, the proposed terms of the new contract, this came from Breed O'Keefe and was copied to other people as well. So they wanted Ryan, and Renault had wanted Ryan to do, to go to the dealers, to meet all of their customers. The relationship with the sponsor is with RTE. We have nothing to do with that. We don't work with Renault. So the relationship is with RTE, and the relationship is, it's probably the biggest sponsorship.
So RTE contacted you and said, listen, we're a little bit concerned. Ryan is taking a pay cut. We want to set up a separate deal.
This is nothing about pay cuts. This is nothing about. This was a separate commercial deal. Who
came to you? Was it the Director General came to you?
No, Breed O'Keefe.
Breed O'Keefe came to see. In page 9 of your documents, the pack that you gave us, it says we would also need, and this came from yourself, I think, we would also need a side letter agreement from RTE to guarantee and underwrite this fee for the duration of the contract and beyond into the next contract. So you sought a guarantee for a deal that you'd nothing really to do with as such.
Why I was looking for a guarantee is quite simple. It was never for RTE to pay it. It was that if the sponsor changes, so we have a 5-year contract with RTE for 205 radio shows and
we know
38
that you said that.
TV
but
shows.
Sorry, time is of the essence. But you sought the guarantee that RTE would pay if the deal went belly up.
It was never for RTE to pay. The guarantee was around if another sponsor came in, that they would have. Again, the relationship is with RTE and the sponsor, not with us. So they'd have to talk to the sponsor and say, do you want him? Would you like him to do? The sponsor obviously wants to have the host perform different duties for them.
So you didn't agree with RTE underwriting the deal?
It wasn't about underwriting. It was about a sponsor change. It was actually what it was about.
But at this stage, the sponsors were gone. And you said it was never about. No, Reynolds, I'm talking about the tripart. I'm talking about years 2 and 3 as well, right?
Yes.
Not only did RTE underwrite the Reynolds contract, but there was an agreement there to underwrite the 2. And you were looking for a side letter agreement from RTE to guarantee and underwrite this for the duration of this contract and beyond into the next contract. So you clearly there said, page 9 of your documents, you wanted RTE to underwrite. And in response to you, Breda O'Keefe, I think it's her email on page 10 of your pack, she said on behalf of RTE, states explicitly that we can provide you with a side letter to underwrite this fee for duration of contract. Right? So you'd requested that they underwrite it, and she, in that email in page 10 of the pack, was responding to your request. That's correct?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
So what?
So, there's one thing about, and you said that Ryan was agreeing to a substantial pay cut and he was entitled to seek work elsewhere, and that's absolutely fine. Nobody has an issue with this. But the problem here is that the deal was underwritten at your request for the 3 years, at your request, by the public purse.
No.
That's the problem here.
Okay.
The deal was underwritten at your request for the 3 years of the contract, and it was paid for by public monies. That's the issue.
I asked for the deal to be underwritten because the relationship with the sponsor is with RTE, it's not
Yeah,
with us.
underwritten by who? RTE.
Yeah.
Yeah, the public purse. Yeah.
But it's actually about the sponsorship.
I just want no. Look, if you
in relation
you
to
requested
this was
it
a
to be
commercial.
underwritten by RTE, and that could only mean that RTE take the hit for it and they pony up. I just want to move on because time is of
No,
the
but
essence.
that- well-
You refer to page 25 in the packets, page 6 in your statement. There was an email from the commercial director for the 2x3 invoices for 75, and it was should be raised, and there was an instruction not to put any person's name on it. And you said there was no secret about this deal, but you agreed to not putting a name on that. I mean, I presume you'll agree that there was no consultancy fees, that there was no consultancy done for 75,000 for yourself.
What? No,
No,
what we
so-
did was act on, at all times, instructions from RTE. And as I've said, RTE is a 100-year-old organisation with auditors, accountants.
Yeah, but you're also a businessman, you're a
we
negotiator.
We trust
Sorry,
the process. Why would you not trust the
look,
process?
You're a businessman, you're a negotiator, you look after your clients. That's your job. That's your job. There's no issue with that whatsoever. But you'd imagine when you were instructed not to put names on the invoices, and we're not talking about €2.99 or €3.50, €3.50. We're talking about invoices for 75,000, and you knowing that you had asked them to underwrite the agreement. So you had asked them that they underwrite, they confirmed that they were underwriting the agreement, they were putting it through the barter account, you were told not to put a name on it, you knew exactly what it was for, and you didn't flag that up, you went along with it, and yet you say there was nothing secret about the deal.
There was nothing secret. We simply acted under instructions from RTE.
Yeah. But you knew they were underwriting the deal, and you knew that was the 75,000 payment that was due to Mr. Tubridy, but you didn't put any.
We simply
Yeah.
acted under instructions from RTE.
So that's, fair enough then. We had heard last week that the auditors weren't happy that Grant Thornton were brought in, and that at some point you were informed of it. When was that? And was it the Director General that informed you, or who and when?
That was May. That was May 23rd of this
May
year.
23rd.
And that
okay.
would have been from RTE's legal office.
Their legal office, which would have been who exactly?
From somebody from RTE's legal office.
Sorry?
26.
Yeah.
26th of May.
Thank you.
Okay.
So that was from Paula Malooly, Director of Legal Affairs, and that was the 26th of May 2023.
Okay, and so RTE knew, Grant Thornton knew, you knew. Did you tell your client about it?
Yes, we would have informed our client, of course, but that was the first that we had heard.
That was the
That was
26th of
Grant
May.
Thornton.
Yeah. I just want to come to Mr. Tubridy, if I can, please. And there's just, in 2019, you might have seen this out in the public domain recently, that you were launching the St Vincent de Paul Christmas appeal, and when you were interviewed, you were said that you were haunted by the idea of children in poverty and the homeless crisis, and you also said that you'd accept RTE's cost-cutting measures gracefully, and when it comes to this sort of issue, that's not something you've ever been found wanting on. But here we are 3 or 4 years later, and we know that that pay cut was subsidised by this deal.
Yeah, I wouldn't characterise that as a pay cut being subsidised by any deal. I also,
But that's what it looks
I would also,
like. I
with
mean, that's what it was
respect,
drawn about.
Deputy,
Yeah.
I would also urge you not to conflate somebody being well paid with somebody who might not have a conscience, particularly with work that you mentioned, St. Vincent de Paul. It's a charity I have enormous time for since I was a child.
No, I'm sure, in fairness, I'm sure, sorry, just one second, because we're asking questions
I appreciate that, but I just think it's under the circumstances. I would not like to sully the work that those people do around the country.
There's nobody mentioned the work that those people do. I'm referring to what you stated.
Sorry,
yes. You quoted in the media.
Yes.
Right, that's what I'm referring to.
Okay, I'm sorry, I apologise.
And I accept that you do a lot of charity work.
No, I'm not trying to say that. I'm not
there's nobody saying anything otherwise.
Sorry, Deputy, I appreciate that. Yes, I understood.
You do that good work. But at the same time, you knew that this separate deal was being done and it would compensate for the pay cuts. But you also knew, and this is the thing, that your agent had requested that RTE underwrite that agreement.
Well,
so you knew,
sorry,
I just get to the question. So you knew that that pay deal was going to make softer or not even enhance any pay cut that had been taken. But you also knew through your agent that RTE were underwriting that deal. So that you knew that when your colleague...
There's a misunderstanding here, honestly.
This was a separate contract.
No, I'm not talking about the
this is a
Reynolds.
separate contract for separate
services.
Yeah. A separate
I'm talking
contract.
about the tripartite.
Just allow Mr. Kelly to answer briefly.
This
We'll
was
keep
a
it
separate
concise.
contract for separate services. This had nothing to do with Ryan's new contract for radio and TV service. This is a separate contract.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The tripartite deal.
Yeah.
Where the two...
With RTE and Renault, the sponsor,
where
and RTE.
Had underwritten that agreement, right?
Yes.
And they were paying it. And my question to Mr. Tubridy
No,
was...
Renault were paying it.
Sorry?
Renault were paying it.
Renault, but RTE paid them. And then the 275 payments...
But if RTE paid them, that was an RTE thing.
Yeah.
Renault paid.
Yeah, but
And if RTE paid them, that has absolutely nothing
fine.
to do with
Well,
us. We don't work for. I don't work for RTE.
No,
we don't work for RTE. So no, just I know you're trying to clarify.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm talking about the two. We've just discussed it, so there's no way you don't know about it. The two €75,000 payments that were put through, that you were asked not to put any person's name on. They were underwritten, as you said, at your request.
Is the question being directed at Mr. Tubridy?
Mr. Tubridy,
yeah, well,
yes.
Mr. Kelly, please don't interrupt.
Sorry.
Mr. Tubridy.
So, I think that the reason, sorry, Deputy, to clarify, the reason Noel is coming in on this is because his knowledge of the nuts and bolts of these things is far superior to mine. So I'm not being disrespectful to you by not answering some of my
and likewise, but I'm asking you again in relation to that, when, and you did say that, it haunts you and child poverty and that, and that's perfectly understandable. And of course you do.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, where does that tally with the fact that you knew that the two payments that were going through for 75,000, the tripart agreement was struck, right?
Yes.
You knew that they were for yourself as part of that tripart agreement, but you would have also known that RTE had agreed to underwrite that agreement. So in fact, it was the taxpayers, it was the licence fee holders that were paying that money.
As I understand it, there was a relationship with Renault that would sort that out.
No, the second and third one we're talking about,
Yeah. But am I not right in saying that?
With all
The second and third one, there seems to be a misunderstanding.
No, there's no absolute. We've sat through 3 weeks of it. In all fairness, Mr. Tubridy, there's no misunderstanding from our.
Well, I'm misunderstanding, obviously. I apologise.
There's no misunderstanding. I'm talking about the 275. Look, if you prefer not to answer, that's fine. If you don't want to answer,
no, I'm happy to answer. I just feel that I was always under the impression that money was from Renault.
From Renault,
yes.
you received 345,000 extra in payments.
Now,
was underwritten by RTE, so the taxpayer.
I really dispute that.
Okay, so we're going to move on because we just have to give movement because we have full attendance here. Deputy Mark
Thank you for your
Cossick,
time.
10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to the witnesses for attending and for your opening statements. I know, Mr. Tubridy, you're fond of a small quirky fact that tells a story. And I'm sure as well, 79% of us listen to radio daily here in Ireland, despite everything else that's open to us, from Spotify to podcasts to everything else. We're like most people who are big radio listeners in our house, and you were in our kitchen 5 mornings a week. And I think that's the thing. I think it's, you were that familiar voice in our kitchen. You know, when you told us we were all in it together during COVID in particular and during the recessions,